As Earl Nightingale once said, "We are all creatures of habit. We can do most things without even thinking about them. Our bodies take charge and do them for us." This is a powerful human ability that can work both in a positive and negative way. In this video, I will share with you the secrets behind habit formation and explain to you the role dopamine plays in the creation of habits so that you understand the science behind it and approach changing habits in a faster and more effective way. Take walking as an example. We first start crawling, then we stand up, and after that we start to take our first steps. We stumble and fall many times till we master the skill of walking. We then start to go a bit faster. Again we fall and keep on falling again and again until we can balance our bodies well while running. Even walking up the stairs starts with a lot of careful steps and concentration, until we reach a point where we do not consciously think how we are walking up or down the stairs. Walking is one example. Think of hundreds of other skills that you couldn't do to start off with, and eventually master to the point that you do not at all need to concentrate much while performing them. Skills like eating, drinking, tying your shoelaces, and writing, and even driving a car. In fact, have you ever noticed that whenever you consciously focus on a certain skill that you have already mastered, you tend to cause some interruption to the flow and in some cases cause you to panic and almost trip or fall or struggle with that skill? That happens because your unconscious mind is extremely powerful and fast, while our conscious analytical mind is much slower and careful. How many times have you consciously decided to make a major change, started to act on it, but eventually you found that you could not, even though you had the will to change and even started to act consciously towards it? You still ended up back to the familiar behaviors. That is because your habits are deeply ingrained into your subconscious mind, and so the body is drawn to the way it has performed that skill in the past, the old behaviors, the old familiar self. I hope you're finding this information useful to you. Next, we will discuss how dopamine affects habit formation, so stay tuned for that. This is Rewired to Grow, your go-to source for leadership and personal growth. Subscribe now and unlock your full potential with our transformative content. Let us now look at how dopamine plays an important part in habit formation and reinforcement. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter, a chemical messenger in the brain. It's often associated with the brain's reward system and is linked to feelings of pleasure, motivation, and reinforcement of certain behaviors. Understanding the role of dopamine provides insight into why habits can become so ingrained and difficult to change. In the context of habit formation, dopamine operates in the following way. Cue recognition. When you encounter a cue or a trigger that is associated with a particular behavior or habit, your brain releases a small amount of dopamine. This initial release of dopamine helps your brain recognize the cue and prepares it for the upcoming behavior. Anticipation and craving. The dopamine release in response to the cue creates a sense of anticipation and craving for the associated behavior. This craving motivates you to engage in the behavior to achieve the reward. Behavior and response. When you perform the behavior in response to the cue, there is another surge of dopamine in your brain. This release reinforces the connection between the cue, the behavior, and the anticipated reward. Reward and reinforcement. When you successfully complete the behavior and receive the reward, another wave of dopamine is released. This reinforces the behavior and strengthens the neural pathways associated with the habit loop. Over time, this cycle of cue, behavior, reward, and dopamine release leads to the creation of a habit. The brain learns to associate the cue with the release of dopamine and the pleasurable sensation of the reward. As a result, the brain seeks to repeat the behavior whenever the cue is encountered, driven by the desire for the pleasurable dopamine response. This connection between dopamine and habit formation is why habits can become automatic and challenging to change. The brain's reward system reinforces habits by making them feel rewarding and satisfying. When attempting to break or change a habit, it's important to recognize the role of dopamine and to find ways to address the craving and reward aspects of the habit loop. By understanding how dopamine contributes to the habit loop, you can approach habit change with greater awareness and develop strategies to create new, positive behaviors that trigger similar dopamine responses. This can ultimately help you rewire your brain's reward system and replace negative habits with healthier alternatives. So, now that you know how habits are formed and how to identify the triggers, look at your own behaviors. Choose one or two that are frequently repeated that you want to change. Then analyze them based on the system we explored, starting from cue recognition to anticipation and craving, then behavior and response to reward and reinforcement. The key is to detach yourself from the behavior and become more self-aware. So, after watching this video, you now understand how habits are formed and how dopamine contributes to the habit loop. I hope you found this video useful to you, and if you want to learn how to disrupt habits, then click on the screen right now to check out our next video on this topic, and I will see you there.